Welcome to 21st Sports 2015 Season Preview for the Minnesota Vikings. We're going to go over the roster and the regular season schedule and make our predictions for every game in the regular season. But starting off with the roster, at quarterback you have Teddy Bridgewater, and he had a really good year last year as he came out the gates with 2,919 yards. He had 14 touchdowns. He did have 12 interceptions, but you gotta consider that he's a rookie and he didn't really have much of a running game to speak of. Whereas that's going to be different this year. Is AP is back, Adrian Peterson. Regardless what you think of him, he is one of the better running backs. He's one of the tougher running backs. He does pad his stats a little bit in garbage time, but even if Adrian Peterson is just having an average season, he's bound to get 1,000 yards. He did have over 2,000 yards back in 2012, so that should be an improvement for their backfield. And with McKinnon and Asiata getting some experience last year, you figure that they'll be able to come in substitutional situations, and especially down on the goal line when you have the option of AP or Asiata. That's going to help the Vikings to get some red zone touchdowns. They also added Mike Wallace at receiver, so that gives a big target for Bridgewater. And he also has Charles Johnson. Then you have Cordero Patterson as well, although he'll be more, in a special teams role, I would imagine. And then the tight end is Kyle Rudolph. So they got a pretty decent offense that can definitely score some points. Let's look at their defense. And their defense, in my opinion, is really the highlight of this team. I believe they're pretty loaded. They got a lot of young talent. They're probably one of the more underrated defensive squads in the league. It starts up front with Brian Robeson, and on the other end, Everson Griffin. And Everson Griffin is probably the most underrated player in all of the NFL. He's a very good pass rusher and run stuffer. He's an excellent player, and he really is the cornerstone of this defense. And up the middle, you got Sharif Floyd and Linval Joseph, are very talented as well. And then at the linebackers, you got Anthony Barr and Chad Greenway. In the middle, Audie Cole. So it's a decent linebacking core right there. Not bad at all. And on the corners, you got Terrence Newman, who is an excellent corner, and Xavier Rhodes, he's pretty good too. And strong safety, Robert Bland, and free safety, Harrison Smith. So they can get the ball, they can get some turnovers, they get after the quarterback. Like I said, this is a good young squad right here, and they'll keep them in some games. And all around, they've got a talented roster. We'll just look at the special teams right quick. You got Blair Walsh at kicker, and Blair Walsh actually has the record for the most 50-yard field goals in a season with 9. He set that record a couple years ago. And Jeff Locke is their punter. And then punt and kick return duties, you have Cordero Patterson. You also have Marcus Shrells. And Patterson is the threat to take it to the house anytime the ball is in his hands. He is a playmaker, although they were struggling to give him the ball last year. Be interesting just to see him even in the special teams role, and even if they can integrate him into the offense. So then the Vikings have a lot of potential for this season. Of course, they are in one of the toughest divisions in football, the NFC North, where they got to play the Packers and the Lions twice, so that makes it kind of tough. I don't have them projected as making the playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised if they end up, overperforming my projection. Alright, the recording actually cut out there. We were having some technical issues, but we are back, and we're going to go over the season schedule and give our predictions for every single game at this point. And we start off week 1, September 14th, Monday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers, and that's a 10:20 p.m. Eastern time kickoff. All these times will be Eastern, although I know if you're in Minnesota, it's Central Time there, so that would actually be 9:20 in Minnesota that you'd be watching the beginning of that game. And I have the Vikings winning this one, so I think they shouldn't have too much problem with the Niners. Then week 2, September 20th, 1 o'clock, at home against the Lions in their first division game. They get started off right away in week 2 with a division rivalry game. But I got the Lions winning this one. Although it's in Minnesota, the Vikings do have a chance to win this one. It should be a tight game, but officially I got to go with the Lions. So in week 3, September 27th, 1 o'clock, kick off their second straight game at home. This one against the San Diego Chargers. And I have them beating the Chargers in Minnesota. Then week 4, October 4th, 4:25 p.m. kickoff on the road in Denver against the Broncos, and I do believe that they can beat the Broncos. I believe they can get after Peyton, and I believe this young defense will give him some problems and force some turnovers. So then week 5 is their bye week. They're 3-1 at this point. It's a bright start to the season, but then things get even tougher. It's a tough schedule early on with the Lions, Chargers, and even the Broncos, especially that defense. But week 6, they're hosting the Chiefs, and I think the Chiefs will get the best of them in that game. The Chiefs are a really tough team with a really good defense. They almost won the West last year in the AFC. I think here in this game they win this one. Then week 7, October 25th, 1 o'clock kickoff on a Sunday. They got to go to Detroit for the second time. They face the Lions this season. I have the Lions win this one in Detroit just as I picked them in week 2, although it's very likely this could be a split at this point where both teams win at home. But we'll see how that goes. But week 8, they got to go to Chicago November 1st, 1 o'clock kickoff against the Bears as they face their division rivals from Chicago for the first time in the season, and I have the Bears winning this one. This is a 3-game slide right here after starting 3-1. But then in week 9, I have them evening things up at 500, November 8th, 1 o'clock kickoff at home against the Rams. And the Rams are a tough team, but I think that the Vikings can beat them in Minnesota. So in week 10, November 15th, 4 o'clock in Oakland against the Raiders. I have the Raiders winning this one, but this is another game that they have the potential to win. I'm, projecting them to be 6-10 overall, but I think that they could very easily flip that, and they could go 10-6 or 9-7. And these are some of the games where they have the potential to win, and if they do win, that's where they'd have a shot at a wild card. Games like against the Raiders, and even against the Bears. And even if they can split with the Lions, as I was saying earlier. But here in week 11, they'll be going against the Packers as they'll be coming into Minnesota. It's another game where I have the Packers win this one, but the Vikings potentially could win. They're division rivals. They're very familiar with each other. They play each other really tough every time these two teams get together, and it's in Minnesota. I got the Packers, but I wouldn't be shocked to see the Vikings pull it off. And then week 12, November 29th, 1 o'clock, in Atlanta against the Falcons. I'm going with the Falcons in with this one. It's another tough game, and they have a tough schedule this year, so if they do end up, coming up above 500, that'll be quite the accomplishment. Like I said, it's a tough schedule, and I got to go with the Falcons here in Georgia. But then week 13, December 6th, it doesn't get any easier. It's this Sunday game at 1 o'clock. It's going to be against the Seahawks. It is in Minnesota, so that does make things a little bit more, even-footed, but still I got to go with the Seahawks at that point in the season. Of course, Minnesota, a lot of it's going to depend on that defense and how much, they've grown. As they were showing some really good signs last year. If they take it to the next level, then it'll go a long way and make them competitive against these teams, but I got to go with Seattle at this point. Week 14, December 10th. It's a short week. They're back in prime time for the second time in this season. This one a Thursday night game on the road in Arizona against the Cardinals. And like I said, it just doesn't get any easier. They got all these tough teams they got to face in their schedule. They're facing some of the toughest defenses in all of football, especially right here back-to-back weeks. And this one's on the road, and I got to go with Arizona. So that's a 5-game losing streak after a 3-game losing streak, which they break up in week 9 after having started 3-1. But then I have them going on a 2-game winning streak as they got 2 home games right here. First in week 15, December 20th, after 10 days rest, going against the Bears. I have them splitting against Chicago, but they have the potential to maybe even sweep that season series if they can take that one earlier in the year in week 8 against the Bears. But I got them winning here at home. Then week 16, December 27th, against the Giants in Minnesota, 1 o'clock kickoff. I've got them winning that game as well. And then week 17, January 3rd, 1 o'clock in Lambeau Field against the Green Bay Packers. That's how they finish the season, and that is a rough way to finish the season. But it's a possibility. It's an outside shot, a long shot, that just maybe, that they can get a few things to go their way. They get a few wins where, there's losses, and they probably aren't going to go on such long stretches of losing streaks, a 3-game and a 5-game. especially with that defense. So if they can break those up with some wins and flip that around, maybe, just maybe, this game could even be for the division. I don't have it picked that way. Like I said, it's kind of a long shot. But I've heard some people pick Minnesota to take this division, although it's a tough division, and the Packers are the class of the division. They're the reigning champs, and the Lions are right there too. So, I mean, Minnesota is competitive with those teams, but they're still young. They're still like a year or two away. Of course, at that point, who's going to be in their backfield is the big question. So they kind of need to win now from that perspective. And like I said, they could be a wild card team. I would not be at all surprised to see them make it in the wild card if they can, come out with 9-7 or 10-6. Although, like I said, I'm projecting them at 6-10. It's just such a tough division and such a tough schedule. I don't know why their schedule is so tough this year. I mean, you see them. Part of it is they're going against the AFC West. That really hurts them a lot. Having to go against the Chargers, Broncos, Chiefs, and Raiders. And then they're also going against the NFC West, having to go against the Rams, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals. Those are tough games, even though they get to start off with the Niners. But there's so many tough games. And they got the toughest division in football, part of which they do make it the toughest division with how good they are and how good the Packers are and how good the Lions are. And the Bears should be better than last year, even though I still have them just at 4-12. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Sorry about the tardiness of the uploads. Like I said, we had some audio issues, but we got it up there for you. And I do appreciate you listening. I really greatly do. Thank you so very much. And I hope you're having a good day and have a great weekend and enjoy all the sports.